agenda is in unfinished business is item 6C, which is the update on bids for video on board meetings. I did give you what information I had last Thursday at the work session. I've since gotten even more information. I think rather than try to dissect that information this evening, I would like to move that agenda item to our May meeting so that we can have a more in-depth conversation in regard to the hosting topic of the video, whether it's hosted in one place or another and that kind of thing. So with the board's indulgence, I would like to move that to our May board meeting.
Any opposition to that?
All right, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item number 7, new business, and 7A is the textbook adoption. I want to make sure, I'm going to do as best I can to provide as much clarity to this as possible. The state requires us, it is state law, that we go through an adoption process. Because you adopt a textbook or a series of textbooks does not mean that you necessarily will purchase or have to purchase anything on that textbook list. You can even apply for a waiver if there's something else that you want to select that's not on that list. We as a school district, just like every other school district in the state of Tennessee, are required to respond to the State Department of Education by April 15th that we have actually conducted the adoption process. As we've conducted that adoption process, we have met the criteria that is prescribed by the State Department of Education. That being that committees were selected and the board approved those committees in at our October board meeting. We did have a change made to one of the committees, meaning one person was changed in November. The committees first met in October the 25th, and at that point they take an oath, they learn about the process, and they begin the textbook review process. In January of 2019, there were samples sent to all of our schools that had samples of all the textbooks that are on the state-approved textbook list. There's not just one on a grade level, content specific area textbook. There are multiple textbooks on these that are sent to the schools that are on the state-approved textbook list. In January and February, the committee members spend time reviewing these textbooks. They spend time talking to other people in that content area in their schools as well. Then in February, there's actually what's called a textbook caravan, where many of the publishers come through, as they do in all school districts in the state, and do presentations in regard to those textbooks. These textbooks are we go through an adoption cycle every year for textbooks for a different content area. Once we select a textbook, if indeed we do select a textbook from that list, we have those textbooks for 5 years, 5 to 6 years. We had several, or the committees had several meetings to gather feedback. At this point, there has been no final selections made on any textbooks in our school district. Some of the content areas that are on the textbook adoption list don't even have textbooks being recommended in those areas. What I am asking the board to do tonight is to vote to adopt, to say that we have gone through the process and we are doing what is called a blanket adoption, which means that in the final process, when a textbook is selected, then we have already adopted that textbook. That doesn't mean that we are purchasing or we have made a final selection, or that committee or any committee has made a final selection at this point. Again, The vote tonight is to do a blanket adoption, not to make a purchase. We are bound by law to adopt, not to purchase. The public notice, there will be a public notice review that is getting ready to be published. That will be prior to the final adoption per our board policy. That is April 15th, 2019 from 4 to 6 p.m. at Acres Service Center, which is our warehouse location. We will have that location staffed that evening. We will have all of the textbooks from grades kindergarten through 12th grade for any area in social studies, history, accounting, psychology, economics, every topic that is on the textbook approval list for this year will be there.
What was that date?
The date is April 15th, 2019 from 4 to 6 p.m. at Acres Service Center. That is the public notice for all our schools or any community member who wants to review those textbooks to come by. But in order for us to comply with the requirement for adoption, we have to do, our board has to take a vote, and we have to submit that we have gone through the adoption process, which is exactly what we have done. And we have followed not only our policy, but state board guidelines on textbook selection. Now, that being said, there was one other thing that I did want to address, as we have in other situations. This isn't a Q&A time, but it is something that I will make a comment on. As far as accommodations being made, we have always made accommodations when requested in regard to science, social studies, even a math situation. At one time we made an accommodation. So we are very open to that and would be very receptive to anyone who is making that request. So as in regard to the textbook piece, and the last thing, and I apologize, I did not say that. The standards that are covered in any content area that we are expected to teach in the state of Tennessee are set by the State Board of Education. And we're compliant with those standards as they come from the State Board of Education. Textbooks in every content area bill themselves as that textbook which covers all the standards. It is up to our textbook committees in any given year. Next year, you'll be sitting here and it will be the English Language Arts textbooks. It is their task to make a recommendation. And those final recommendations, again, have not been made, and they will come later. So again, my recommendation to the board tonight is that we do a blanket adoption. This is an adoption. This is not a vote to purchase any specific textbook. In fact, last year during the adoption cycle, we did the same thing for science. We've done the same thing annually for as long as I can remember, and I've been in this office for 20 years. Last year, we purchased carts of Chromebooks so that we could use digital content in our classrooms, because that was the recommendation from the science textbook committees. We still have our committees who are making, who are discussing what they think is the best situation for their students and for them moving forward. So my recommendation tonight is for us, and I'm going to ask the board to take a vote for a blanket adoption so that we can meet what we're required to do, and that is submit this form to the state of Tennessee by April the 15th, which states that the Sullivan County Board of Education approved the adoption of textbooks is indicated on the attached local adoption report. That is it. That's an adoption. This has nothing to do with a purchase, and this has nothing to do with an individual textbook.
Ma'am, may I make a
No, you
comment,
cannot.
please?
No,
So,
no, no.
That is what I have, Mr. Hughes. So at this point,
You could choose
I
not
would
to,
recommend
to
that
adopt.
we do a blanket adoption for our social studies textbooks.
You have a recommendation, do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Gilmore makes a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Spivey seconds the motion.
Discussion.
I'll say that. Discussion on the motion?
Discussion.
I think the concern of so many of our citizens is that we did in fact adopt My World textbook for social studies the last adoption period. So I am, I just have a statement to make that in light of that, the United States of America was established on biblical principles and the rule of law based on the Ten Commandments.
Amen.
Our Constitution.
We'll have order.
Every
We've had a
single,
chance. Hold on.
every-
Hold on. We've had public comment, and now we'll have order now. Go ahead.
every single member of this board took a sworn oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Every elected office in this country swears to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. When we want, and I defer to the First Amendment, and you know, we seem to be so ignorant of our own Constitution and our own amendments. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. We want our parents in our homes and churches and Sunday schools to instruct our children in faith and belief in God. That is not the job of the public schools. Teachers are not equipped nor want the responsibility to teach comparative religions. When you look at this text yourself, and I really encourage people to look at the textbook for themselves. I want you to take note of the essential questions that are at the ends of chapters and throughout the book that we're asking our 12-year-olds, our 13-year-olds, our 10-year-olds to discuss. We should be teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Used to teach history and government.
Stop. We very politely held public comment, and now there'll be silence in the boardroom, and we'll have to ask everyone to leave. Please we respected your right to speak. Now, it's the board's turn.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
We used to teach history and government, and now it's called social studies, and I think social being the key word. We cannot stand by as a Board of Education and allow this philosophical confusion be introduced into the hearts and minds of our children sitting in their school desk. And as a note, the other textbooks are more of the same, not just the Pearson textbook. I can't even remember the name of the other one. I didn't write it. The others, I didn't write it down.
McGraw.
But it's more McGraw. They're all the same. Western civilization cannot be taught as history without religious freedoms, and Islam is a religious government. If one adheres to Sharia law, one cannot submit to the Constitution of the United States of America. We have posted in every one of our schools now, because it is state law, "In God We Trust." Which God are we referring to? A specific question was asked by a student in our system that still haunts me. And he said, "But Miss Blank, I thought there was only one God." The answer to that is yes, there is only one God. And we must choose this day who we will follow. Our constitutional republic will not remain free for all to live and worship under Sharia law. And we're hearing that from the halls of Congress. I'm asking my fellow board members to vote no on the proposed social studies that we adopted last time for sure. It is unconstitutional that we are teaching religion. And if you look at that textbook, that's exactly what it is. We can do much better than this for the students of Sullivan County and for the core values of the United States of America. And we'll all be free. This country must remain free. And I just hope that we can really look at this and allow the input of the citizens and taxpayers of Sullivan County to really investigate this and have input as taxpayers of this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any other discussion?
I'm saddened that we're having this discussion. This is a public school district. I would commend you, Ms. Thomas, to also read Article 1, Section 3 of the Tennessee Constitution. And I just want citizens of Sullivan County to know that I don't want a single student in this school system, as the public commenter made the comment, to feel excluded.
We need to do it.
The very fact that Ms. Thomas brings up which God are we talking about in our school district is a preference of religion. That is unconstitutional. Second, if you, Ms. Thomas, I didn't interrupt you. Second, if you actually read these texts, facts about what people believe is not indoctrination. It is not proselytizing. That's what we heard in public comment tonight, which is you're absolutely right under the Constitution. I deeply respect that. And that's why I'm making this point, because this is a public education system. Sullivan County and the county school systems under the Constitution are constitutionally mandated to provide a free and public education to all students, regardless of race, creed, or their religious preference. If you actually look at the text and the state standards, learning about culture and history is not indoctrination. It is fact. Ignoring facts is ignorance. And I'm saddened that this is the discussion that we're having right now in Sullivan County, because Ms. Thomas made a comment in the paper about this doesn't reflect the beliefs of our community. I believe that East Tennessee is a pragmatic, hardworking, accepting people. The idea that our school system favors one God over another, or that we should even ask which God it is part of the problem with this discussion. We've kind of skipped over the issue. The issue is state standards and adopting a textbook. I am in favor of going forward with the director's recommendation, and as I said in the work session, I hope that all students in Sullivan County know that our board, I believe, at least I can speak for my behalf, and I think most of us do want to promote inclusion, and we are not stating preference on this board for any one religion. Thank you.
Further discussion?
The word religion, if we could put that,
When I said discussion, it means from the board. Public had the right to discuss earlier. Further discussion?
I taught American history in this county for 23 years and served as an administrator for 6 more. I also started the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at Sullivan North in 1987, 88, and as far as I know, it still exists. When I moved to Bluff City Middle, I started a chapter of the FCA there. My son is an ordained minister. Both of my sons have done mission trips to India, and one son taught in Beijing for a year. It was very important for my sons to understand the cultures that they were attempting to demonstrate Christ in. It was very important that they understood what Hindus believed and what Buddhists believed. And it was very important for them to spread the fragrance of Christ, as it is for us in all situations that we find ourselves. In the public school setting, as I've examined these texts, it is Muslims believe, and it outlines it. It is a point of view. It is Christians believe, and it outlines. Jesus' Sermon on the Mount is included in the text. There's nothing proselytizing. There is nothing that would cause me as a parent or as an educator to be fearful. Because if my sons were not grown and they came to me with questions, then it is my job to say, well, yes, this is what they believe, and this is what we believe and why. So I appreciate your passion, your faith, your expressions of that. But as far as us, we have a responsibility to render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and we're obligated by law to protect all students and to follow the process as outlined by the Tennessee Department of Education. And if you don't like that process, then you need to contact your legislators, because the board is obligated to do our responsibility. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
No.
Mr. Spivey?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
No.
The next item on the agenda is item 7B, policy 5.106, application and employment. I recommend approval of that policy and its changes on first reading.
You have a recommendation. Do I hear a motion? I'll make a motion. Do I hear a second? Mr. Spivey seconds the motion. Discussion.
Just take notice when you vote, look.
Hearing